Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're watching from. I'm Colleen Tauke, and I'll be the instructor for this live event. We are working on a cookie slide hot pad. Now, some people will say, what in the world is a cookie slide? Well, in the past, when I've been making cookies with my kids, and we had made cutouts every year when there were kids living in this house. We always had these little tiny hot pads, and you take out a cookie sheet and lay it on the counter, and it would kind of rock back and forth. And I was always afraid somebody was going to tip it over, or as we were decorating the next round of cookies to go in, we would have it sitting on a hot pad so it didn't scratch the counter, and the kids would tip on it. And I thought, why does a hot pad have to be a small square? It can be a rectangle, and it can be big enough for the entire cookie sheet, or a casserole, or a pan of cinnamon rolls right out of the oven to fit onto. There's no reason why a hot pad has to be this little round circle or a little square that you use. Maybe those are good for taking them out of the oven, but when you lay down your item onto the counter or the table or you're serving, having a nice big surface to sit that on and protect your countertop or your table is what I've always wanted. So the cookie slide hot pad was kind of created, and it can be rolled up to store in the drawer. It could be folded in half and then stored underneath of towels and things for if it's seasonally created. Or you can create one maybe that just goes with the decor of your kitchen. Maybe you'll have it out a lot to use. So the free pattern, you can see the QR code is now popped up. So you can just take your phone across your camera across that. It'll give you the link to the download for the pattern if you haven't done that already. And you will also find included some recipes for some really fun Christmas cookies. We kind of bundled together some of our good recipes from our creators out there and added them to the cookie slide hot pad pattern so that you have the whole thing in the bundle. Remember, pop in and say hello. We've got someone saying good morning from Louisville, Kentucky. We've got someone saying greetings from snowy Michigan. I think that the Midwest and that upper area of states in the U.S. are pretty much coated in white right now. Suzanne says, I too am from snowy Michigan. Yay. I think that the wind is going to be picking up here this afternoon and this evening. We're talking about whiteout conditions and blizzards in some areas. That snow on the ground is going to be up and blowing around. Perfect time to stay home, make some cookies, warm up the house with the oven, and have those great sugary smells throughout your home. How perfect of a time is that? It's the holidays, it's snowy in many areas, and usually baking is mom would do on those snowy days. That way it kept us busy. If we weren't baking, we were doing the dishes or eating or snitching the cookies. So perfect timing to work on baking and maybe even creating that hot pad ready for maybe roll them up and put them into stockings for Christmas. I don't know a single person who wouldn't love to have something big to lay out on the table when they're bringing out that casserole, hot dish, when they're making their cookies in their house. So make sure you pop in and say hello, where you're working from. Oh, we've got a bunch of them. Let's see. We've got Creative Juan. Hello from Michigan. Maria says good morning from Southern Mississippi. Kelly says hello from Arizona. I love these free tutorials. I've learned so much. We're glad that you enjoy what we produce. The idea is to be helpful to you as a creator, help you to kind of get those ideas going, get into the studio and create things out of all those fabulous fabrics that you may have collected over the years. Catherine says, good morning from Redford, Michigan. We've got Michigan watchers today. Catherine says, it popped away. Sorry, Catherine. Let's see. Nancy says, good morning from Central New York. And remember, all of our videos are always available later. Go back through our website, or you can go to YouTube and watch them at your convenience. So maybe just watch along now. And if there's a technique or something I've done or a tool I've used that you wanted to catch more about, you can always go back and rewatch. That's the wonderful thing about capturing video, so that it's for you and it's convenient for you. Let's see, we've got Paris. I can't pronounce your last name. Good morning from Washington State. We are glad that you're joining in. Now, when I went to create this, to be totally honest with you, I found this little candy cane print in a big box store, and I couldn't leave it there. I thought this was so cute, but a smaller scale. So I had to think of a way to use it so you would still see all the candy canes and have some fun. Because it wasn't large scale, I could use it in smaller pieces, but it had all those kind of classic Christmas feels of the reds, the greens, and the little snowflakes on a black background. And perfect black on something you're going to use in the kitchen, it'll wash. It'll be fine. Let's see. We've got Kathleen saying hello from Texas. Sigrid says good morning or good evening from Germany. Yay, we're glad that you're watching. Soledad says good morning also from Michigan. Boy, the Michigan watchers are up and going today. Barbara says good morning and happy holidays from Victoria, Canada. Okay, so I bought this not knowing for sure what I was going to use it with, but I love the green in this. So I went to my fabrics, I had a leftover piece. I have no idea what it came from, but it was the perfect green, and it gave a really good background for my cookies to lay on. And then I decided I need a cookie fabric and finding some kind of like a gingerbread man. So this brown or cinnamony color, you could use whatever fabric you want for your little gingerbread guys, but I thought the cinnamon kind of looking color was perfect for the gingerbread, and you could still see the design that I wanted to put onto them. And then I needed something for a binding, and I could have just reused, and you may want to reuse the fabric that if you have enough yardage to use the border print, which is my really fun candy cane print. I like the red on the outer edge. It just gave it an extra little pop. So those were my 4 fabrics that I was going to use to create my little gingerbread guys on the center of my cookie slide. We've got Deborah watching from Pennsylvania, and another one from Germany. I can't, Manula, maybe? I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but we are so glad that you're watching in from Germany. And Susan says hello from upstate New York. Watching from Germany makes me, brings back the trip to Christmas market that I did for a couple of years, and all of the good feels of Christmas market, being outside in the snow, having a hot drink, looking at all the wonderful Christmas decorations, hearing Christmas music. What fun of a trip was that. Christmas market even here in Des Moines. So hopefully this weekend I can get out and enjoy that. So we are going to create from our pattern. We've got all of our fabrics figured out, and then we're going to be using really very basic tools. Your rotary cutter, mat, rulers. The one thing that maybe if you haven't done a lot of applique, because the little gingerbread guys are appliqued on, is that I use a heat and bond product, and it makes the fabric fusible. So if you haven't done this in the past, we'll run through the real basic instructions on that. But it's a papery product that has a kind of a glue layer to one side, and that one's by Heat and Bond. There are other fusible products out there. I think Pellon makes one. There are ones that are made that have paper on both sides and the adhesive layer is in the middle. That is also an option. Just remember to read the instructions. They're very easy to use. I've used probably 4 different brands of fusibles. This just happens to be the one I have on hand, a Heat and Bond. Make sure that it's the stitchable version. Very important, because I literally made that mistake once. Oh, and I bought the product that was not stitchable. It had a little sewing machine symbol on it, and it had slash through it, and I didn't pick that up. And you try to stitch through that, and it will gum up your needle. It will break thread every time. make sure that you buy Heat and Bond Light or a fusible that is made for stitching. Okay, make sure, because that can totally change the game of getting this project done. Sarah says, good morning from North Carolina. Cheryl's watching from Colorado and is in Mount Vernon. We've got Isabel watching from Portugal. Yay! Our international quilters are watching too. We've got Lisa from my neighboring state of Wisconsin. Yay! And Donna is watching from Charleston, South Carolina. We are so glad that you guys are joining in all of the fun here. I've got a watcher from Southern France. Pecha, I don't know if I probably have just slaughtered your name, but we are so glad you're here from sunny south of France. And Trudy is watching from Ontario, Canada. Our quilters are all waked up. They're all to work on a fun project. You're going to go ahead and cut the center section is kind of the pan or the background of your cookie slide. And you're going to cut your borders. So I have some pieces here. I've already pre-cut a center section for my cookie slide. I went ahead and cut the strips that you're going to use to cut the pieces for your border that go around this. Now, here's a tip. It tells you the exact size to cut the border strips. And in most cases, when I work on a project, I put on the longest sides first. So that's the order that you're going to be doing them in this. So that means that you're going to cut to length the side, the top and bottom borders, longest first, and then you're going to put on the shorter sides. The reason why we cut to length is so we don't distort the center section. No different than cutting borders for a king size quilt. You should always measure to make sure you know what size, and your pattern will usually always tell you what the lengths of those borders need to be. And usually they will start with the longest ones first. So apply those borders. Now, if you are new to quilting, don't just take a piece of fabric. Sorry, I have a few rules. I don't have a lot of hard and fast rules, but this will keep you honest. Cut to length those pieces instead of just taking a strip, stitching it on and thinking, I'll just cut it off on the other end, because that little bit of stretch that we'll have will distort your entire center. So if we've got these cut to length, let me get a ruler quick here and I'll show you what I mean. I need something to the square here when you have rulers everywhere, but you don't have the one you want. Okay, I am going to cut this. Always take off your salvage edges. Those shrink differently than the rest of the yardage. They tend to get tight. And so you really want to make sure that you are taking off the salvage edges and not using that in your quilt. And usually there's white there. So you don't want to accidentally include that in your quilt. Now, I just measured that according to the side so that it is, let's see, 15 inches long. And when I talk about putting borders on, even on a quilt, you cut the right length that you need. Make sure that you match up the beginning and the end. And I am not a huge pinner, but in the case of putting borders on, you should always pin at the beginning and the end and somewhere in the middle so that this doesn't all shift and end up not fitting exactly, because this will keep your center of your project square. So pin the beginning, the end, and the middle, and if it's a really long seam, like on the edge of a king size quilt, you'll want to put a few more borders in there so it doesn't distort as you sew, because the presser foot and the feed dogs, the presser foot, this piece here, and the feed dogs underneath, those little teeth that pull things through, they don't always work perfectly in tandem if we just let the fabric slide a little bit and you get a distortion. So long sides first, press seam along the outer edge. I usually always include that because I like to help you along the way with best practices. Once you have long sides on, then you put your short sides on. Again, kind of pin the beginning and the end just to keep yourself honest, and then press your seam allowances toward that outer edge. We've got Christine saying good morning from Boise, Idaho. Looking forward to staying inside when and staying warm and dry. Good idea. Mary says hello from Maine, I believe. Watching from Maine, watching in Pennsylvania, I believe. We are glad you're with us. Casey is watching from Illinois, and Tammy says hello from Pennsylvania. Holidays. Christmas is the best time of the year for making projects and creating even gift ideas. I'm working on book pillows right now for my grandkids. So there's always some fun things. The book pillows were a project from quite a few years back. You can find them on our Facebook page or our website if you'd like to see what those are all about. It's just a lap back pillow that you make for kids, and where the lap is usually you just kind of ignore the lap on the back of a pillow, but you stuff a pillow or a book inside there as a gift. So we are going to create the appliques for the little top of our cookie slide, and you get that in your pattern, and make sure that your printer prints it at 100%. If it doesn't exact, remember this is a cookie shape. It doesn't have to line up any seams or anything, but we do have a key on there that comes up to 1 inch square when it's printed properly. So hopefully it prints off right. We've double checked to make sure that by printing it 100% that it's good. I also have the key on there says the trace 3, and then I did also use a scrap of the red to create the little bow ties on the little gingerbread guys. I thought about using ribbon or something, but I wanted this to be totally flat so that as you sit something in it, it's not going to rock. So we're just using a fabric little shape there for his bow tie. Then we are going to, we've got, I got to read here quick. Ileana says hello from Puerto Rico. Karen from Florida. And another Karen watching from Germany. We are glad that you're watching with us and having some fun. Okay, now you can take this, if you've got a light table, a light board like this, you can take it to the window, wherever, so that you can trace. And I will turn this on so we have light coming up through our shape. And then I need my heat and bond product and a pencil so that you can trace the little shapes on the paper side of your fusible product. Now, again, read all the instructions that come with the product if you haven't used it in the past. I have an entire bolt of this because I use it so often. It's easy to trace on the paper side. And remember, the tracing doesn't have to be perfect. Every cookie is original here. And you aren't obligated to follow the grid line when you actually cut out your shape. So you can clean up the shape when you do actual cutting of the cookie when you have it fused to your fabric. So I'm just tracing around the outside of my shape here. And don't forget the little bow tie. And you'll want to trace 3 of each of those. And then I'm going to, now I have that traced, just kind of raw traced. It's not super fancy. If I'm not perfect at this point, that's okay. The light board that I have, or a light pad, it's a generic one. It came off of Amazon. There's not a brand name to it. You can search for one of those. I got that as a Christmas gift one year, and it's been the most useful, one of the most useful things I've gotten over the past years. Now, I'm going to bubble cut this out. Means I'm not cutting on the lines at this point. I'm just getting it cut away from the other shapes or what the leftover piece is. And I'm going to bubble cut the bow tie because that has to be out of a separate fabric. And then I'm going to be able to apply this to the back side of my fabric that I purchased for my gingerbread shape. Okay, let's see. Let's get to the gingerbread fabric. Now, when you're putting these on, grain line isn't really an important issue here. It's not a thing to worry about. And in fact, I tend to kind of skew it off grain so that I don't get a straight string popping out someplace along a straight edge. So what I tend to do, and you can see, here's where I cut my others out. I'm going to lay that onto my ironing surface. Make sure that you have a fairly firm ironing surface. Make sure your fabric is pressed flat first. And then I can take the fusible side, or if it's a double paper product, you're going to remove the paper that doesn't have the traced shape. In this case, I've got my glue side here. I don't know if the shininess comes up a little bit there on camera. So that's the glue layer I want to lay against my fabric. Since this is a printed solid fabric or a woven solid, there's not really a right or wrong side, but if you're make sure that you put it on the wrong side of the fabric if you're using a print, and fuse in place. Make sure you read the instructions for the amount of time it takes to get the glue layer warmed up and adhered to your fabric. There's going to be just a little bit of differences between the the different products out there. So make sure you always read their instructions. You don't want to overheat. Let me get that back on so it stays warm. You don't want to overheat the glue because that will actually kill the glue, which means that the glue will absorb all the way into, there's nothing left to float between your applique and your background fabric. And why do I say that? Because I've done that. I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't stick. I know I fused it long enough. Well, I fused it way too long, and there was no glue layer left behind to adhere. So learn from my mistakes, please. Let's see. We've got some more people. Let's see. We've got Jan watching from El Paso, Illinois. And hello from Johannesburg from Denise. We are glad that you're joining in. See, now that I have my shape bubble cut and I bubble cut it out of my fabric, it's much easier just to have one shape in front of me at a time. I can go in with the scissors now and make a nice clean cut of that edge. Now, a lot of us are tempted to use these shorter blades because they're sharp, but actually a longer blade on a shear works nicer to give you a longer, cleaner cut because you don't have to open and close the blade as often, and that creates a smoother curve as you work your way around the foot and up the side. It was a little trick I learned from a very seasoned quilter over the years, because I used to always want to pick up those little scissors and think, oh, those will be perfect. Well, if you've got some like inside shape to cut out on letters, yes, but these longer blades are really nice to make a smooth action as you cut out the gingerbread or any shape that has a rounded edge, so that you get that more smooth curve and less what we call elbows or starts and stops in your shape. So this is your chance to make that shape nice, cleaned up edge. My tracing was not perfect. That's okay. This is my last attempt to make the outer edge nice and smooth. And a lot of times I'll fuse my projects, get everything ready to cut out, and then I can sit down in the evenings and cut out letters. I was cutting out letters for pillowcases, for book pillows. The last few nights, the last week, I've been cutting out all kinds of shapes. So there we have our little gingerbread men all cut out. And that's when you make that create that nice curve to it. Now, when it comes to centering everything on here, it doesn't matter exactly where they fall. Just remember, oh, there's one thing, let's see, that I did first. I did the rickrack, because otherwise you're going to end up putting gingerbread too close to the edge, and then you won't be able to put the rickrack in if you prefer to do so. Forgot all about that. Rickrack was something, this is nostalgic for me. It kind of brings kind of a 60s, 70s kind of era. You can get them online. You can get them in big box stores, little reels of rickrack. There's the narrow, which is the 1/4 inch. And then you can also go up to a 1/2 inch if you really like the look and you want a little more bold appearance to that outer edge. That's what the larger would look like if you like. that. I decided to go with the smaller version. I kind of like that petite, a little more detail, a little more subtle. So the rickrack was applied literally on top. I had put the borders on, or I put it on the green first. So I have to back you up a second. I put it on the green first. My borders on. So I guess I did you dirty on that one. I used a glue stick. You can use just a simple kid's glue stick. That way you can position I made a mark with a fabric pencil on there. So I knew that it was about how far was it? I'm trying to remember exactly where I placed it now. This is a detail that if you want to add it, if you don't, you don't have to. Let's see. The rickrack I made a mark at 3/4 of an inch in from the green edge. So 3/4 of an inch in. And then I followed that edge along one side of the rickrack to get it fairly straight. So I just put that on first and then stitched right down the center of it. And you can see the corners are just overlapped. I didn't want to have to make a corner with rickrack and have it be lumpy. So I just put on the long sides first and then the short sides. Same order as putting borders on. But the glue stick did help. I applied that to the back side of the rickrack. And that would held it in place really great until I got it to my sewing machine. So just driving right down the edge like that and then applying it to the fabric so that trying to pin something that narrow didn't work very well. So glue was great to get it in place, stitch right down the center with a thread. So then you can go ahead and put your borders on. And then when it comes to putting the gingerbread men, you can have them dance across here anywhere you want. Just remember to not maybe get too close to that outer edge so that they kind of feel like they're not way out on the edge or not too grouped tight in the center. And maybe you want your gingerbread men going the other direction. That's up to you, however you see. I thought it was fun, just kind of one direction. They were just kind of jumping off the rack at me. So once you decide where you want to place your gingerbread guys, then it's time to, you're also going to want to cut out from the red piece of red, your bow ties. I forgot about that. And then you just remove the paper layer on the back. Just a quick fold on the edge and the paper will release. And then you can, quick fold on the edge. It usually just pops right off at me. Okay, get my finger around there. So there I go. Gently release the paper. And then you can see I've created this shiny back. That's the glue layer. And then I can decide where on my background I want them to be and then fuse again. Follow instructions on how hot to set your iron, how long to apply, but then you can apply those. And then the little bow tie fused on top of that, kind of position under his chin. And then it's all about stitching. So when we get to we're getting to doing that outer edge, I decided that the blanket stitch, or a buttonhole stitch, some people will call it, was a detail that I wanted to do the outer edge. I wanted to look kind of folk art like. And I used a close to matching thread, kind of a cinnamon brown color. You may choose to do a zigzag off that edge. You may decide to do a straight stitch around the outside edge, just close to the cut edge. Preference is up to you on how you decide to finish that. Once I had the gingerbread men all stitched down, and I'll do an example real quick here on the stitching, but I did a straight stitch around the bow tie because it's so small. There was not much room to get that blanket stitch in, and I didn't want to overemphasize it. So that's a straight stitched close to the outer edge, which is an acceptable way to finish a project. It's not going to get a lot of wear and tear. Then the trim was on after that. So Tracy says, cute project, glad to watch. Always enjoy the challenges. The edging always challenging me too. That outer edge of every quilt is always kind of a fun thing to work on, or if you're talking about doing the blanket stitch off the edge of an applique. Always a time consuming, but well worth it. skill to really hone in on. Susan says hello from Southern Ontario, Canada. We got Karen saying you could also use a decorative stitch around the border. True, you could do a decorative stitch out here if you don't want to invest in a reel of rickrack. Our machines make hundreds of stitches. So put in a fun decorative thread and do a stitching along there all the way and use the capabilities of your machine. Perfect idea. Candy says, I cut heat and bond to paper printer size and run through the printer to trace required. Oh, well, that works too. If you are tech savvy and you know how to get that image transferred to your printer and printed out, saves a great step there. Okay, now when it comes to doing that blanket stitch and deciding on how tight you want it, I always practice before. I've got just a couple pieces of fabric here that I wanted to do just a little bit of an example. When you're going around curves like that, you're going to go slow. This is not a speed type stitching situation because a gingerbread man has a lot of curves to him. He's got arms and legs and a head. So it's going to be very rhythmic and very slow. For the size of the stitches, let me see. I did not note that in the instructions. Let's see. I was going to go really quick and do a sample to get to the size approximately. I think, yep, that's probably the size. Now I'm going fast because I'm going on a straightaway. Okay, when you're doing straight, yes. But when you're doing curves, it's going to be a lot slower process. The size was approximately, here we go, width 3.0, length 1.8 approximately. And you don't want it to be too much more stretched out because as you're doing a curve, you want to be able to make it more gentle. The stitches need to be a little tighter. And if you make them too wide, it kind of takes up all the space of the applique. So a 3.0 and a 1.8 length, so 3.0 in width, or 3.0 width, 1.8 in length is about enough to get maybe a little shorter. You could probably do a 1.6 on length, will give you enough space to make the curve. And when I'm talking about doing a curve, I will cut one really quick and I'll show you what speed you really should be going. Because sometimes people go, oh, but you did that really fast. Yes, but that was also a straightaway. When I'm doing a curve, I'm going about like this. Kind of rhythmic, turn on some good music. Don't be afraid to start and stop if you need to. It's always best to start with stop with your needle off the applique in the background fabric and then do just a little bit of a turn. You don't want to do a real fast turn unless you're doing like an inside corner, like under the arms or at the neck, because you want that stitch to seem consistent as you're making the curve. So little turns, gentle, just take your time. Don't be in a rush. You can get around those curves. And there's a sample of going around that curve very slowly, rhythmically, so that you can make that curve look nice and clean as it goes around the arm or around the leg. Now, for the last points in let's see, we've got a couple more popping in. Cindy from Alabama, Tuscaloosa. Rebecca, good morning from Moorhead, Kentucky. We've got a lot of people watching. We're just so glad that you guys all, Janice says, love it. We are glad that you are enjoying the project. Now, for his eyes, I just did a tight zigzag, or you can opt to do a Pigma pen. You can just draw on. The thing I did, though, because I'm always afraid of getting the placement wrong, is to use a fabric marking tool. Whether it's a friction pen, because you're going to stitch over it, or ink over it, to kind of make sure you get that placed where you want. You don't want his eyes too close together to look like he's cross-eyed, and you don't want his eyes too far apart. So you can use the template to kind of measure the width between eyes and the mouth. I did go back and stitch the mouth. I had done it in ink, liked it, but then just did some hand stitching over the top, or you can do machine stitching right over the top of the little grin there. I glued and applied the zigzag over the arms and legs, and then stitched right down the center to secure the decoration there. And I went in and used a single decorative stitch, so the little star stitch for his buttons, but you could hand embroider those if you want. You could use a Pigma pen if you like. It's totally up to you how much ornament decoration you put on your little gingerbread guys, just to create something that looks festive and happy and brings joy to your kitchen. Tracy says, I like talking and stitching around the gingerbread man. That blanket stitch info is helpful. It is, because a lot of times people just say, oh, just stitch it. But you have to go slow. You have to be kind of in rhythm. Remember to always try to drop. If you want that edge to look nice and clean, you're always dropping the needle into the background right off the applique. And then it takes a bite back into the applique. So it's a rhythmic stitch. So you keep the straight stitch part of it, the outside edge, nice and aligned as you're working right around the curve. Barb from northern Wisconsin, on the South Shore of Lake Superior. I bet it's cold where you are. What do you have on the back? Backs of quilts are always fun, and I always like to be able to flip it over. You could put another holiday on the back, which gives you double use. So if you put Christmas on the front, you can put Valentine's on the back. But I had this really fun other print in large scale, so I have more candy on the back. I must love sugar. Just a little sugar for Christmas. I had found this print and bought a piece of it also. Didn't know where it was going to be used for. I thought about using it, but it was too large of scale. So scale of print, very important when we're thinking about projects and where we want to use them. If I would have cut this down to those small borders, you wouldn't even have been able to tell that was candy canes. So small candy canes on the front, large candy canes on the back. So that's the back of my project. Oh, and because it's a hot pad, remember that you're not using just one layer of batting. I believe I said to use 3. So 3 layers of regular cotton batting or cotton poly blend batting on the inside. Don't use polyester batting. Polyester batting can be very heat sensitive and may not be as good at protecting your countertops or tabletop. You can also use Insulbrite if you have that. That is a reflective layer of batting, but I usually use Insulbrite with something else just to give it a little bit more stability and a little extra cushion. So you've got the reflective, and I would maybe use 1 layer of regular cotton batting with it. But if you don't have that and you have those scraps left from your projects, guess what? 3 layers of batting the sides is probably pretty easy to come by. I stack those up so that we're really protecting our countertop and our table when we're using this for a casserole dish, a cookie sheet when we're making cookies, or we're serving and enjoying time with family. Let's see, we have Michelle popping in saying good morning from Alberta, Canada. Barb says, another super cute idea. Thank you. We appreciate that you are here joining with us. The cookie slide hot pad patterns ready for you to create, or take the idea and run with it and make your own cookie slide casserole hot pad to protect your holiday table or your next gathering. I'll see you in the new year. I hope that your holidays and Christmas are full of fun and memories and family. If not, find someone who's family and enjoy time with them. We see a lot of people who get lonely at holiday time. So gather with the people in your area. If it's through your church, your community center, they all will enjoy spending time with you. I'll see you in 2026.